I'm Dan. I'm working for Organics Aotearoa New Zealand. I've been a long time green activist and a fair trade activist, and so I'm just going to talk to you about what's called a trade agreement, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, but what it is a Trojan horse for corporate control of our food supply and also of our creative industries in New Zealand, among other things. But particularly, the worry is for us. Jack was just talking about how, you know, even if we shut down Monsanto, other corporations are waiting in the wings to get that control. But I just want to give you a quick little primer on how this works. So basically, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, they started negotiating about 3 or 4 years ago. The idea is, because the World Trade Organization is a failure and hasn't delivered free trade and investor rights, they are now negotiating what is a kind of Pacific Rim thing with New Zealand, Australia, the US and so on, some Asian countries. And the third bit is supposed to break down trade barriers, but what it's really going to break down is investing barriers, and it's going to give investors, corporate investors, more rights than citizens in the country. And this is how it works. So I call it a protection racket, I don't call it a trade anything. What Monsanto has, and what these other corporations have, that they want to protect is their intellectual property. Now you all know that Monsanto started off as a chemical company, and it had a product called Roundup, glyphosate, and it had a patent on that product. And that patent was about a 30-year patent, and of course it could see when that patent expired, what was it going to do then? Because it wasn't going to be able to make the profit of having exclusive rights to that chemical formula. So then it thought, well, what could we get absolute rights to that was linked to our product? And of course it was the canola seeds and the cotton seeds and so on that were engineered to be Roundup resistant. So it went from having intellectual property in a chemical to having intellectual property in a life form. And it meant that it had control over the secret formula of both those things, and when it lost the control of the secret formula of the chemical, it still had control over the secret formula of the seeds. But the thing is, if this was an intellectual property and say you made a movie, you would keep a copyright on it for forever and ever. And nobody else could make that movie, could they? Because it's human action. The thing about seeds is they replicate themselves. And so what Monsanto then has to do, it can't just go in and say, I'm sorry to Mr. .com, you know, you're ripping off my movies and putting them online at Mega Upload. It has to say, you are not allowed to plant any seeds that you have grown in your field that happen to have our Roundup Ready gene in them. Now to do that is quite difficult because of course there are millions of farmers all around America, wherever, sowing these seeds. And so what Monsanto has is a large army of spies who go out and check whether any farmers are replanting seeds illegally. And so it bullies farmers, and if it finds that this is happening, or even if it is happening accidentally, as it happened in Canada, where a poor farmer whose canola crop was contaminated by wind-blown GE pollen, they take him to court for theft of their property. He countersues for contamination. It goes to the High Court in Canada, and they, in a majority ruling, judges say Monsanto has the right to collect this off the farmer. But in his countersuit, he settles out of court, and so we don't know what that settlement was, but I mean, a ghastly situation. So they bully the farmers directly by these huge court cases, which are really, really expensive. They also bully green groups. A case in South Africa, under the South African Freedom of Information Act, a group called Biowatch Trust, which was set up specifically on the genetic engineering issue. It went to the South African Agriculture Department and said, we want the information on what trials are happening on GMO seeds in South Africa. And we want other bits of information about what you're doing with these seeds. They took it to court. Monsanto went to court on the side of the state of South Africa, said it had interest to protect. The lower court judge ruled that Biowatch was entitled to 8 of the 11 points of information it wanted from the state of South Africa and awarded costs to Monsanto. So this is a little green group, no money, like us here today, we're not rich, expected to pay court costs for this corporation. They appealed that. It went all the way to the Constitutional Court of South Africa. 11 judges fortunately ruled unanimously that not only did Biowatch not owe Monsanto costs, but the state of South Africa owed Biowatch costs. But that is the level of kind of bullying they will go to. The third level of bullying, that's bullying green groups. Then they'll bully governments. How will they bully governments? Medical emergency, Monsanto on the loose. So they will bully governments through getting the government, Monsanto of course, there's a revolving door between the Monsanto Corporation and the American government. They want the American government to negotiate investor agreements like the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement that will give them rights that are greater than those of the citizens of New Zealand. For instance, we've been trying to get proper labelling on food for a long time, and they don't want us to have it because they know that we are able to let people know that there are concerns about eating genetically engineered food, and if people know that it's there, they won't eat it. So they will say that then the government, they will come in and they'll say, well, you are not allowed to have a labelling law that tells people exactly what's in their food. Because if you do that, we will lose market share. And we've got a right to operate economically in your country. And if you do not do what we want, we won't take you to the court of the land where the citizens can hear due process. We will take you to a secret tribunal in New York where only trade lawyers will argue this out. Now, this is already happening. The Philip Morris Company is at the moment taking the Australian government to a secret tribunal in New York over the fact that it has brought in plain packaging for cigarettes. So this is, if you like, the Australian government has decided it's better to have non-labelling of cigarettes, and they said no, because we need these shiny packets saying cigarettes are great for you and make you sexy, and so it's all those things that they have set up this thing with other smaller trade agreements like the North American Free Trade Agreement, on which this TPPA is modelled. We know that within a year or so of that agreement being signed, genetically engineered corn was flooding the Mexican market. And that we now know that in actual fact, Mexico is the home of corn, and that a lot of native indigenous varieties have been contaminated now through that gene flow that's been going in. So that's why I'm saying, bullying governments and bullying citizens can happen in lots of ways, and so it's really important that you actually look out for these so-called free trade agreements and understand that they're actually depriving you of your rights. And I've got 4 copies of this magazine from the Campaign Against Foreign Control in Aotearoa to give away, if none of you know about it already. It's a place where you can keep up with where this is going on. So thanks for listening, thanks for coming, awesome crowd.